There he is.
Are we live?
Yes, you are.
We are live. All right. Merry Christmas, Cochise County, and welcome to the Michael Zehr Show. Today's date is December 23rd, 2022, and Christmas is only 2 days away. I'm so excited this year. I've kind of been in the holiday spirit. Last 2 weeks ago, I had my Santa hat on, and I tried to, get a little bit. Last week, I was up in Phoenix visiting my daughter and grandkids because my grandson turned 16. So I wanted to go up there, and every year I go up and celebrate his birthday with him, and I usually take a whole week and go up there.
Aw.
So that's where I was at last week. I was up in Surprise, so that was a nice little vacation. And I want to check something real quick just before we get started here. I want to make sure of something back here. No, I don't see anything back there. Nope, nothing under the desk. The reason I did that is because last night Chosen Martial Arts was in here doing a live stream for the better known businesses, and I didn't want any of their secret ninjas popping out at us and surprising us. That's one. Oh yeah, you were.
I'm part of that secret
He's
ninja
part of the
society.
yeah. And you did the demonstration, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Rob's arm's not feeling well, but he'll be all right.
Well, he thought maybe you broke it.
I did not. At the same time, he signed a waiver, so he cannot sue me. I am in no way, shape, or form liable in any way.
Okay, so today, our special guest interview I have with us today is Polly and Keith. I forgot your last name. Webb. Yes, thank you. I usually ask that before we go live, but I'm not used to having a producer today. So Polly and Keith Webb, and I want to thank you both so much for sitting down with me this morning and talking with me today. And before I go into like your military career or any community activities and stuff, before I start, that's how the interview usually runs. What are your plans for Christmas? Anything special?
Well, we have 3 grandchildren in our home right now.
Okay.
So they keep us on our toes. 13 months, 5 years, and 6 years. So we're busy.
Great ages.
We're super busy. So our plans are to just spend the time with them on Sunday. I work on post at this point full time as well.
Oh, you do? Where at?
I work for Netcom.
Okay. All righty.
Yeah, I'm pretty much working. I'm doing a pond renovation right now, so I'll be doing that today and tomorrow, and I mean it's going to go into the following week. But
and that's at your business?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would just actually I'm doing this full time now. I just left. I used to be out at on the EMARS project Storm out at the airfield.
Were you a contractor? Or
yes,
yeah?
Mm-hmm.
How long did you do that for?
I was there for Mag Aero for about it was about 6 months.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I was up at actually Netcom with Polly. I was up in CSLA.
I can't believe CSLA is still around all these years later.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I used to work for them. Geez, 40 some years ago. You still do?
Work for them.
Eric still does work for them.
Nice.
What do you do there, Eric? Remind me again. Logistics.
That's why I thought you looked familiar.
Yeah.
So that's how you two.
That's
I've been
funny.
there since 2014.
Yeah, I worked under Amy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm over on closer to the opening of
Yeah.
the place, so.
That's
All
so
funny.
funny.
Yep.
It's a small
Very.
world.
It sure
Very.
is. It sure is.
So what I'd like to do is to start with your military career. Where were you at before you enlisted, and what inspired you to join the military at that time?
So I'm I was in Ohio.
Ohio.
I was in Ohio because that's where I'm from. I'm from
Okay.
Ohio, but I'm also an Air Force brat.
All right.
Graduated high school in England.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was in Ohio. I had filed for a divorce
Okay.
from an abusive, manipulative ex-husband.
Good for you.
Thank you. And I can remember my parents used to tell me about how how strong-minded and independent I was, and I just wasn't with him anymore. I had lost who I was. And we declared war on terrorism, and I went right down to the
Oh,
recruiter's
9/11 then.
office.
Okay.
Yep, it was in early 2003. I went down to the recruiter's office, and I told them, I said, I've got to do something with my life. I needed something for me. I needed to do something and do my part. And I knew that at that point in my life, I was broken and trying to heal from a rough relationship. But I knew somewhere deep down inside, I was meant to do something more with my life.
Right.
And I wanted to show my children that it was never too late to turn your life around to make things better.
Okay.
So when I enlisted in the Army, they tried to get me to do something that I wasn't going to be shipping out for like 6 months. I was like, no. I need something where I'm leaving like next month.
You
So
want to
I
go
shipped
now?
out in 3 weeks. 3 weeks I left, and I was an Army interrogator.
Oh.
So
I love to talk to women, veterans, especially ones that have experienced some sort of traumatic experience, because I like to hear the empowerment and the strength that the women have to be able to carry on and march forward. And I swear sometimes that they're stronger than men. You know, I mean, with some of the stuff that they have to put up. So kudos for getting out of a bad relationship, because I know that's not easy to do.
it's not. It's not.
And I've witnessed it as an only child with my parents didn't always get along, you know, and so yeah, it's not only tough on yourself, but your children, if you have children
Yeah.
at the time too. So
Yeah,
so very good. So you joined the Army?
I did.
Okay, and where did you go for basic training?
I was at Relaxing Jackson.
Fort Jackson. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't very relaxing though.
Had you ever been on the East Coast before?
I had
From being oh yeah,
but
because you're
not.
that's right.
Yeah, most of my life, with my dad being in the Air Force,
Uh-huh.
I lived in Idaho, upstate New York, England,
Oh, okay.
Ohio. I always lived somewhere north, so it was always 4 seasons at least. And and Washington State. One time we were stationed at Cannon Air Force Base, New Mexico. It's the only time my dad was ever stationed anywhere relatively warm.
And it had to be a shock because of the sand and everything. And
Yeah.
like you're saying, you're not experiencing the 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Although they do get some snow depending on what part of New Mexico
Yeah.
too. So then you went to Fort Jackson for your basic training.
Uh-huh.
That was for what, 8 weeks?
Yeah, 9
Okay.
weeks.
And then what about your?
But
Okay, go ahead.
because I am poly and I have troubles
Okay.
all the time. So I got out of an abusive relationship, got into the Army, into an abusive relationship. I ended up fracturing my heel in 2 places in basic training. I ran and finished my PT test and passed.
Okay.
And my drill sergeant took me directly from my PT test to the health clinic.
Right.
Where they did x-rays and said, oh, well, that's why you were in so much pain. Because I had 2 fractures in my heel. I had apparently had the 2 fractures for like 2 weeks. And I was in week 7. So I had to go on convalescent leave for 30 days, try and allow it to heal.
Okay.
And then go back to basic training again. They offered me an opportunity to chapter out. And I was like, no. You have no idea what I've gone through to get this far. Nobody's going to kick me out of here and tell me that I can't do this.
So when you came back on convalescent leave, then did you have to restart the whole 8-week training?
Actually, I got lucky enough to be dropped into a different unit.
Okay.
Back into the week 7, so I had to repeat my PT test.
Yeah.
But I just finished out the last 3 weeks with a different company. It was kind of weird. It was kind of odd. I don't know how many of you have ever had to do like PT rehab, it is grueling. It is probably worse than basic training itself because there are so many people who enlist or the any military branch, and they think they know what they want until they get there, and then they're like, it's a shock, going through getting broken down to be rebuilt.
Right.
They
Into
can't
what they want.
They can't sustain it, and they deal with mental health issues, and it was really hard to be surrounded by a bunch of people who were either there were females that were pregnant that were waiting to be discharged, or there was people who were on suicide watch. It was awful, and it was really hard to maintain my own will to just
Right.
I had to do it.
But you did it. That's the
I
thing.
did. So I went back, finished basic training, and then from there I came here.
You came to Fort Huachuca, or
AIT.
as we call it, Fort We Got You, and you're not going anywhere.
Oh, believe me, Fort Huachuca's had me for many years.
Well, I came here in '77, and here I sit still today. So they get you.
It's like a boomerang.
Yep.
You think you're leaving, you're coming back.
Yep. So many people have said that too. So.
We left in 2015.
So
after we got here in 2007, we left in 2015, came back in 2017. We went to Hawaii for a year. In 2019, came back in 2020.
Wow.
Back again.
So
We're permanent.
So you're here at Fort Huachuca for a interrogator course.
Yes.
And how long did that course take?
That was 20 weeks, but because I am poly and I like to get injured.
Okay.
I had sustained some ankle injuries. I had sprained it. And so then I was accused of malingering until I had a fantastic drill sergeant who stood up for me. He said, look, if she says she has an issue, let's send her to El Paso and find out what the issue is. They did a bone scan and determined I did in fact have an issue. So they got off my case.
Okay.
And I was able to finish and graduate and get out of there. So what was supposed to be 20 weeks, I was supposed to graduate and leave in February. I ended up finally leaving in end of April.
Okay.
So I went to Fort Gordon.
So from Fort Huachuca, you went to Fort Gordon?
Yep.
That was your first duty assignment?
Yeah.
What did you do there as an interrogator?
Well, I went straight to Iraq.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was there. I got there Memorial Day weekend, and shipped out like 2 weeks later to join my unit that was already deployed.
Oh, did you know a foreign language? Did you know Arabic
Nope.
to be an interrogator? No.
Nope. So this was the same time frame where the Army had decided that they needed the boots on the ground faster than they could get them there after a language. So they were trying to send people there without the language to see if they were just as successful as those that had already had a language.
Okay.
And it turned out it was very successful. I received a Joint Service Achievement Medal in country. The general landed to give me my award. Wow. And he landed while we were taking in mortar fire. Wow. So we're all dressed up in our Kevlar and all standing guard and making sure that everything is secure. And I'm getting an award at the same time. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I got my JSAM, and it was for op-tempo interrogations. I had no language, but I was able to be very productive in my interrogations.
So what was it like for you when you stepped off the plane the first time that you arrived in Iraq? What was that like? It
was like stepping into an oven.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I got there in July.
Okay.
And even in the shade, I mean, I remember seeing a thermometer on the wall in the shade at Abu Ghraib. and it said 145 degrees. I was like, you got to be kidding me. No wonder it's so hot. And that's in the shade.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was toasty.
Isn't that the prison where they had all of the
Yep.
accusations for
unit-
the, yeah.
My unit went in to replace that unit.
Oh.
So we were there to replace, I think it was the 504th that had done that.
Uh-huh.
So we were there in support of them, but to
Right.
replace them. So I was a member
Ah.
of the 513th, the Deuce.
So were you working out of the prison itself, or you were?
Yeah, yeah. I had
Oh
a
my
prison cell
gosh.
that I shared with 2 other people that we slept in with our little cots.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So and the prisoners are like right there, right?
Well, ish.
Yeah, that had to be kind
They
of.
were. So the way it was in 2003, there was an uncovered encampment
Uh-huh.
that was inside the prison walls, but then there was also a hard site for the hardened criminals, the ones who had to be in
Like solitaire type thing, or
I can't tell
The
you
ones
because
that-
I was never in the prison cells.
it was. We don't. It's not. It's need to know, right? We don't need to know.
Yeah. So, but I can tell you that on September 21st of 2003,
Okay.
I had gone down to use one of the porta potties, and it was really early in the morning, probably 4:30, 4:45 ish, and suicide bomber hit the wall.
Oh my.
Yeah, and I was wearing my shorts and t-shirt and flip-flops. I scared the crap out of me. I mean, I could feel the heat from the fire. And
Wow.
that was probably the most intense moment that I had while I was deployed. There were other times where we were receiving fire. So I had about a quarter mile to walk from my prison cell to where we ate, to the dining facility.
Okay.
And then from the dining facility to where I did interrogations was another 500 feet or so, probably about a football field,
Okay.
at minimum.
And when they did the interrogations, did they do them through an interpreter, or did you have
used
a military
interpreters.
soldier
We had interpreters.
that did that, or?
We had interpreters.
Okay.
Yeah. The one thing about working with an interpreter is you can get a sense when an interpreter is not saying what you're saying.
Okay.
Especially when you work with a specific interpreter, you can read their body language. I mean, it's just like when we're dealing with people on a day-to-day basis. You can tell
Right.
when somebody's being sarcastic. You can tell when somebody's being belligerent. And occasionally I had one interpreter that I had to kind of monitor closely because he had a tendency to get amped up and try to interrogate on his own. So that was probably about the hardest, was trying to make sure I kept him in line, because he had to do what I told him. He had to speak as though he was me.
Right. Wow, that's something. I think you're one of the first interrogators that I've interviewed. So
Wow.
It's pretty interesting. I like to hear these stories, because a lot of us that have served know what it's like to be in the military, but those of us that haven't been in a combat situation have no idea. And for somebody to be willing to come in and share their experience like that,
Yeah.
I think that it's very informative, and I think it also helps us to understand why our veterans are struggling so much with things like PTSD and all of this stuff,
Well,
because of.
he can vouch. When we were first married,
Mhm.
I had some demons.
Yeah.
The demons that like to hit him in my sleep.
Right. Well, we'll get to there. Trust me, we'll get there real soon. So you're in Iraq, and
Yeah.
how long were you there for?
We finally left. I was only there about 6 months.
6 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we were redeploying back to Fort Gordon.
Okay.
We were in Kuwait for, oh gosh, we were there through Christmas of 2003, and we got back to Fort Gordon finally on January 5th of
What year?
2004.
2004?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And when you got back to Fort
Hold
Gordon,
on.
where did you go
did I
from
have my
there
years
then?
wrong here? No, 2003 was I enlisted.
Right.
Iraq was 2004, January 2005.
Five. Okay. So when you
Yeah.
got back to Fort Gordon, then what is that where your permanent duty station was, or did you go somewhere from there?
That's where I was stationed until I got my orders to go to the Presidio of Monterey.
And I'm wondering if that's how you met Keith,
Sort of.
stationed over there.
So I met him on Cupid.com, ironically.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had a profile on Cupid.com,
Okay.
and I was very, what would you say? Very
Specific.
specific.
Uh-huh.
I was very specific. So I had things in my profile that were very definitive. If you're not within 50 miles, don't bother. If you're in the military, don't bother. If you live with your mom and your dad still, don't bother. I mean, I was very,
Right.
very, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. And one of the things I had in my profile was, so with Cupid.com, you were not allowed to put in any contact information at all
Okay.
In your profile.
in the profile. So he had reached out to me, and this is where it's probably better for him to tell that part, because he was the one who reached out to me.
Yeah. So I was all the way up in Reno, Nevada. I worked for Dell Computer Corp.
More than
And-
50 miles away, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yes.
364 actually. And so it was kind of funny. I unfortunately was in a bad marriage as well. Divorced my ex, who was unfortunately bipolar, and so I was one of those where I just worked and went to the gym. So that was the only two things I would do. And a couple of friends of mine that I worked with at Dell, after a while were like, hey, you need to get out there. You're literally just hanging out at the gym and at home, and you need to go do stuff. So
You need to get a social life.
exactly, that's pretty much it. And Kenny, a good friend of mine, like I said, worked there. He had told me to go on to Match.com. I tried that, for a little while, and I just talked to people, through, email and that kind of thing, and really just wasn't really my thing. And then finally, he's like, "Look, I got one more for you. You need to try this last one. Just go on there and see what happens." And actually, ironically, one night I got home from the gym and I worked really just crazy hours. So basically, how Cupid.com would work is the profiles would come up the closest to you. Well, the closest one was Polly's profile picture came up, and I was born and raised in Hawaii, so I love the ocean. And her profile pic was her at the ocean in I think it was Monterey.
Yep.
Actually at the time. And so just curious, I read her profile, and like she said, she
Very
had so many
specific.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I think he had alarms going
The-
off in his head. Challenge,
well,
challenge.
It was the confidence that she had. She was so confident in everything, and what I thought was just hysterical is Cupid.com was very. If you didn't pay for your profile, they told you don't put any hidden messages in there to be able to get contacts from people outside of us. We will delete your profile and you have to redo it. So it was just comical. I didn't pay for my profile and she didn't pay for hers. And all
we
you
just
could
did
do,
the free one. That's it.
yeah, and all you could do is you could send roses, these little digital roses to the people.
Right.
So I figured out her email and I sent
How
her
did you
an
do
email.
that?
She had it.
I just had little odd things like in the paragraphs. It would be like
Uh-huh.
little things here and there, and I had it worked in.
Yeah.
So my email, it's Polly won a cracker, and so he had found where it said Polly, and then there was a 1, and he managed to put it all together.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and it was really funny because after I finally contacted her, you know, our first conversation over the phone, you know, she sent a picture of herself and I sent one, and we had a
Oh,
lot
yeah,
of things
the
in common.
Lions.
Yeah, we had these little tiny pictures of
Like what you'd see at a fair.
yeah,
Right.
little tiny picture of a lion, and we both love big cats, so so it just hit it off right away,
And my first question to him was, okay, so you met my challenge, but why? You're more than 50 miles away.
Yeah.
And he said, well, what if I did all the driving? I'm like you're going to be able to do that. But we did. And we were married. So we met face to face for the first time, November 4th of 2005. And we were married April of 2006.
But how long were you talking on the phone before you had met in person?
A week?
Just probably maybe a couple of weeks.
So it
Yeah.
was pretty quick then.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
it was.
you're
It
right,
was.
yeah.
It was very quick.
Here's what fascinates me about online dating. I have quite a few friends that have done this and have found spouses on them, and very successful
Yep.
marriages still to this day.
17
And what's so
years.
great about it is because when you're talking to the person, whether it's texting or emailing or voice versus in person, you're actually listening and getting to know things about each other.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in person, there are other things that can distract you around, So I'm just saying, I think that that's a fascinating story. And
Yeah, and I think the one thing for Paulette, because of our previous backgrounds, the one thing that we really really were able to figure out is we already knew what we didn't want to get into again, and so we already established boundaries.
Both of our previous relationships were the same.
okay,
I was abused. He was abused.
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
men can be abused.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's a big thing because a lot of people don't understand that
Right.
there's a lot of women out there that are very, very controlling.
Manipulative.
Yeah, manipulative. And sadly, he had found one of them, and I had found one of the male type, and it was just we had initially had said, "I'm never getting married again," and then we got married.
Yeah.
And here we are, 17 years later.
Yeah.
So
Still
you're
happy.
in Monterey,
Mhm.
Presidio,
Yep.
and Keith is driving what on the weekends?
Actually, everything worked out as very. God was in our relationship.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
That's
and I say
important.
that
Very
because
important.
when he came down to meet me face to face for the first time,
Mhm.
he was taking some vacation time, and I was on convalescent leave because I had just had 2 procedures done on my right ankle for reconstruction.
And you're still on active duty at this time too, right?
Yes,
When you
yeah,
had that
because-
surgery.
Yep. While I was in Iraq, one of the incidents that I had was I had done some major damage to my ankle, and they had tried rehabbing it at Fort Gordon. They tried rehabbing it at the Presidio, and they finally said, "Okay, look, we're going to have to go in and do a reconstruction on your ankle." And they found a bone fragment that had shredded some tendons.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there was a lot of things going on with my ankle. So I was laid up. I wasn't going to be going back to work
Right.
until like January or February.
You're still in a cast.
Yeah. So I mean, I had a long recovery. I mean, I have an incision from here all the way down from where they had to reconstruct my ankle. So he came down to me and he stayed with me for a week. And then I put in the necessary paperwork and I went with him up to his place in Reno and spent Christmas there with him, Thanksgiving and Christmas with him there.
He looks like he would have been a good provider, like he
Oh,
would have
he
taken
was.
care of you while you were.
He was, and he does. He
Do you
takes
cook
really good
for her?
care.
Do you cook?
He
Oh,
does.
Do you really?
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Well, actually, she can tell you about all her education, but it was funny because when she was going through school, cooking for most of most of the time for the kids.
We're a winning
and,
combination.
It's really hard to find men that like to cook. So
Yeah.
and I'm not. I'm one that doesn't like to cook. So that's what I'm saying. You got to keep her there.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I got to say is we are a team in
Right.
almost everything we do. Like he said, when I was getting my degrees, I would not have my degrees if it weren't for his support. Because after we got here, after Presidio, because I'm
Right.
assuming that's where we were going. We were talking about Presidio. They med boarded me because I wasn't healing fast enough. And the healing didn't even stop. I mean, the swelling didn't stop until probably 2010. It was like
Okay.
mid 2010 before the swelling stopped in my ankle.
So
I was discharged in 2007.
So when you got out of the military, you got out on a medical then?
I did.
So then do you draw medical compensation from the
Not
military?
from the Army, because at the time, the way they did med boards, they told you, oh, here, we're going to med board you for your ankle issues. So here, complete this paperwork. What they don't tell you is when they're doing a med board, they actually want you to list everything.
Right.
And include it all on that paperwork. They didn't tell me that. They omitted that.
Okay.
So after I got here, I went to the DAV. Fantastic organization. If you are recently separated, go to the department or the Disabled Army Veterans.
Disabled American Veterans.
Thank you. Disabled American Veterans. They are fantastic. They helped me get the paperwork done so that I could get my paperwork submitted to the VA, and I'm currently at 80%.
Oh wow, that's good.
Yeah. So I mean, they helped me out tremendously because it's daunting. It's daunting.
When did you go down there?
I went to the DAV. It was in probably May or June of 2007.
Oh, okay.
And got my paperwork submitted before July, because I know come July, September timeframe, I had my VA rating.
And I got to tell you, for those of you watching live or afterwards, the process between what Polly went through in 2007 and how they process claims today is a difference of night and day.
Oh yeah.
Because when a veteran comes in now, they bring in if they haven't ever filed a claim, they bring in their DD Form 214, because I'm a service officer there. So
oh, nice.
I've been doing it. I'm on my second year now.
Nice.
But I like it because veterans come in, you file the claim, you fill out all the paperwork for them on the computer, so they don't have to do anything other than answer questions. Myself or one of the service officers is sitting there typing everything up for them. Then we print everything. They sign it. Then we scan it. Then we send it up in an email to the DAV up in Phoenix, and they get it like that.
Nice.
Right? So you're not having to mess with the snail mail, and so the process is so much easier. So
Very
if you ever
nice.
are going to file for more, if you in the future, if you decide that you have
Yep.
to, you know where they're located at, right?
Yep.
In the nurses' college. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they moved into the nurses' college.
Oh, I
a few
didn't know
years
that.
ago on El Camino Real and Wilcox.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's where they're at. So Kathy wants to know, what's the biggest challenge with online dating while in the service? And did you live on post? That's a good question,
Okay.
Kathy. Thank you.
So I lived on post, yes, and actually there wasn't the biggest challenge that I had was trying to avoid other military service members, because I was enlisted, and there's no mingling between the enlisted and officers. And
Right.
then within the ranks, you have to worry about, are they are they more than two ranks higher than you or lower than you? Because that's a problem as well. So
Right.
that's one of the reasons why my profile was very clear. I am in the Army. Leave me alone if you are in the military of whatsoever. So I'm still pretty clear about that kind of stuff. I'm very vocal.
And you were saying earlier that you guys had got married in April,
Mhm.
and you were still on active duty at that time. Did you guys go anywhere together after that, or were you
To
there
here.
so you got
I
stationed
came
back to Fort
here.
Huachuca?
No, when my med board completed in
Okay.
Monterey, and I got a position offered here for teaching interrogation techniques.
Oh, okay.
So
As civil
that's what brought
service
us. No, actually, as a
No?
contractor.
contractor.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've been a contractor all these years.
Oh, wow. And how long has that been?
Well, since 2007. So
Uh-huh.
15 years.
Yes. Well,
Whatever company, and I don't do interrogation training anymore. There was a period where things were starting to drop off for that sort of field on post, where they were
Okay.
cutting a lot of contracts and stuff. I managed to morph my way into IT. So I now have a master's in information technology. So
Wow. So you have quite a bit extensive background. You got interrogator, you got technology,
Mhm. Oh, and certified aquascape contractor.
certified what?
Aquascape contractor on
What's
top
that?
of that.
What's that?
That's for our home business, our
Oh,
Sunset
okay, yeah.
Water Gardens. So we
Oh,
both went through all that training. So yeah, I'm well rounded.
awesome. So when you came back to Fort Huachuca, you said that it was because you were offered a position here.
Mhm.
So now you're out of the Army.
Yeah.
And you and Keith are both living here in Sierra Vista.
Yes.
Okay. And I understand that you had the job. So, but what was it about Cochise County, Sierra Vista, our community that you liked so much that you decided to make this your home and to build a business around it?
Well, honestly, it was when I was here as an AIT soldier. I fell in love with the Sierra Vista area.
Okay.
I loved the fort. I used to do a lot of hiking back then.
All
I
right.
don't do as much hiking these days. I should, but I don't. But back then it was a small town community. It's doubled in size since then. It's definitely much larger than it was. But I had told him all about it, and we came down together in February of 2007 to look at some houses, and he loved it. The mountains, but being from Oahu, it's a far cry from Oahu because there's like no water unless we bring it. So we brought it in our house.
Well, the nice thing out here is the fact that
Oh, that's right. I forgot that. Thank you.
it's not, I mean, it's Hawaii is, temperatures, temperate all the way through the year.
Yeah.
Right.
But at least out here in Sierra Vista, it's about the most even keel anywhere
Yeah.
that we've ever, at least for me,
Oh,
where I've
definitely
ever
for
been
me.
outside of Hawaii. And so, because I living up in Reno, Nevada, or actually even in Gardnerville, I hate snow. So
Okay.
because I really don't do that well in the cold. So it's it doesn't get that cold here to me, and it doesn't also get that hot. It's not the extremes that Phoenix has. So to me, it was always kind of just in between, the extremes. So I absolutely loved it.
What was it like for example, in Hawaii? I'm guessing they no snow there, right?
Oh yeah, no. I
Right.
mean, if you want snow, you can go on the Big Island. You go up
Uh-huh.
to Mauna Loa, and it'll snow up up there. But no, I mean, temperature in Hawaii sits between 65 to 95.
Right.
So here to me, it's just outside. I mean, yeah, we get some pretty cold temperatures.
It's been cold this last
But
week.
when I lived in Gardnerville, Nevada, which is about 30 minutes from Truckee, that area up there, we would get anywhere between 3 to 6 feet a year of snow, and I just that was just too much for me.
Detest.
Yeah, and even in Reno, I mean, Reno can get quite a bit of snow. So, actually, when Polly and I first got together, just probably, I think it was the season just before we met. We had like 7 feet of snow. I had a Toyota Tercel that I was constantly unburying every day for 2 weeks. So, yeah, I mean, going down to Monterey, that was an easy choice for me.
See, I'm from Illinois, and I'm used to big snow, right?
Yeah.
So when we
Yeah.
get snow here, and I mean like a snowstorm, like we had a blizzard back in the late
2008.
'80s or something like that, and we might have gotten up to almost a foot of snow.
Oh,
And
really?
people
Wow.
are driving and freaking out and not knowing how to drive in
Hold
it.
on. They drive
Yeah.
and they freak out in a dusting here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, but
can
it's
imagine.
at least the snow here is. I don't really call it snow,
It's a dust.
Yeah.
but it is. It's
Yeah, it does. I mean,
It's gone by by the
that's
time
the
the
thing
sun
is-
gets up, it's gone.
yeah.
but it does look pretty in the mountains, though.
It
I
does.
have
It
to
looks
say.
beautiful. And I love seeing the snow-capped mountains all around us
Uh-huh.
and being able to stand around in a t-shirt or a long sleeve shirt
Yep.
and just admire from afar.
So you're working at you got a job here at Fort
Yeah.
Huachuca. You're a contractor. What were you doing at the time, Keith? When you came here, did you get a job too?
So yeah,
or-
I was working. So I left Dell, went down to Monterey. I started working for Robert Talbot there, and then when we moved down here, actually, ironically for me, most of my family's all military. I couldn't get in. I'm deaf in my left ear, so I couldn't get a waiver when I was trying to enlist. But so when I got down here, it was a little bit rough for me because I was primarily in material inventory management and like logistics. So I had some trouble at the time. But it took me probably about a year. I think it took about a year before I found a contracting position with VT Griffin
Yeah.
at the time as a tools and parts attendant.
Yeah.
Um,
And you
working
filled in
with-
with APHIS in the meantime,
Yep.
which
yeah, worked at-
APHIS has been fantastic. My mom's been with APHIS now for 45 years.
Yeah, so yep, I worked there part time at first until I found my first contracting position, and that was probably about 2008. Would you say?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it was about a year after we got here, and then
Yeah.
contracting ever since.
So who came up with the idea of Sunset Water Gardens, and who had the inspiration that wanted to open up and share with us a little bit about your
Sure.
business? Because
Well, so I've been an artist since I was very little. And actually it's funny because she says how much I inspire her. So when we first got married, when I was married to my ex, I stopped drawing, I stopped doing all my art, and when we got married, I just out of the blue one night I was sitting at her dining room table, and I started drawing something. The first time I had drawn in probably 7 years, and
wow.
so I just did a picture, and she didn't realize I did any drawings because I didn't have any. I didn't keep a lot of my
Right.
drawings from
Right.
the previous time. So, but she said, "Hey, you really need to keep doing this." So from there, I just kept going. But how this all turned about from the water feature business was I love Japanese water gardens. Growing up in Hawaii, I love ponds. I love koi and things like that. So we had talked about. She's known I've always wanted a pond in our backyard. So I've a couple of times made some attempts on a previous property that we had, and she's like, actually, I found Pondscapes AZ up in Phoenix and befriended Ralph Bazad who owns that, and so we had
Another
talked to
veteran.
him. Yep,
Okay.
another veteran. Yep, Marine, and so I contacted him. He came down, and him and I mean, we really hit it off. We started talking for an entire day, and Polly.
Yeah.
She's so funny. She's the driving force in our house. I mean, she drives everything forward. So we're sitting there and we're talking with Ralph, and out of the blue, she goes, "Hey, I know Keith would love to do this. How does he get into doing this?" And it's just kind of comical. So he, first thing, he said was, "Hey, start on your house." So I started building a fountain feature in the front, and a fountainscape, and then eventually a pondless waterfall for Polly. Polly loves water as well, and so that started that road on to becoming certified and all those things. But also the name, we originally were going with Artist Waterscapes, but Polly and we love sunsets. I was born on Oahu, but I grew up mostly on the west side of the island, so
Okay.
I was used to the sunsets there. Polly just loves taking sunset photographs, and we kind of just decided that it was a better fit to have Sunset Water Gardens as the name. And so,
Not to mention the fact that since he did the water features in the front of our house, we have the mountain backdrop with the sunset. And I was always taking these. We would sit in the evenings and have our dinner,
Okay.
and we'd have sunset waterscapes.
Right.
And we decided at that point, we're like, you know what? It's Sunset Water Gardens. We have our own Sunset Water Garden right here. And that's how we got the name.
And what is it that your business does? Do you go to other places and design or build for them, or do you offer a place where people can come if they want to reflect, and what is that all
yeah.
about?
So actually, our house is what we decided we were going to use as basically our showroom. So
Okay.
we have the the fountains feature and the pondless waterfall in the front, but in the back we actually Ralph had came down. And actually, as a gift to me, he brought with him Brian Helfrich, who is the vice president of construction at Aquascape. Actually, the headquarters is in St. Charles, Illinois. So,
Okay.
and then also Jack Huryu, who is the owner and operator of
Atlantis
Atlantis
Water Gardens
out in New Jersey. And so those two gentlemen came down as well. So we built a very large 6,500 gallon pond with about 50 tons of boulders. Yeah,
Wow.
so the back, that one's really big. And I built a second pond where we could separate out our koi in the big pond and then our goldfish in the smaller one. Now
The
what I'm turning
smaller
in,
one, though, is still a pretty large pond.
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's about 16, about 10, about 12 by 16. And then, so the backyard's really we're turning into a Japanese type style water garden. But yeah, so people can actually come and see the different options there. And so
Everybody that has come to our house to explore options has spent no less than an hour.
Okay.
And so far, the longest was Sandra Jones, and she was there for a little over 3 hours.
Yeah, so Sandra Jones,
just relaxing and enjoying it.
Sandra Jones is up in CSLA, and it was kind of funny because she had a pond built about 10 years ago and wanted. She's had trouble with just leaking in the pond and stuff, and so we were actually. I knew Sandra from working with her in CSLA, and my boss at the time, Amy, told Sandra, "Hey, I know you were having trouble with your pond. Why don't you have Keith take a look at it?" So went out, took a look at her pond, and at first looking at just fixing it up and getting it set. And ironically enough, I said, "Hey, unfortunately at the time, it really needed an overhaul." So I invited her down to our house to come and see some options, and she came. We sat in the backyard for 3.5 hours. Yeah, it was like 3.5 hours, almost 4 hours. We just sat there, just on a prayer deck that I built right next to the large pond, and just talking. And as she was leaving, she goes, "Okay, I'm set." She's like, "Let's start. Let's do this redo." So I started on the renovation and actually completed hers shortly after. But it's a lot different when you can actually see and hear a pond or the fountain feature, as opposed to video just never does it justice.
Right.
And especially for someone that pondless waterfalls, fountain features, and even a pond, but especially the first two, they're really great for de-stressing. I mean, unless you sit down next to a well-built water feature, you don't realize how much stress you hold and keep until you're sitting there.
And I can attest. Because I internalize my stress. I always have.
Okay.
Except for when I was externalizing it on you in my sleep. And with the water features at the house, I have my choice. I can go sit out front and just listen to it or watch it, the combination, or I can go sit out back anywhere in the backyard and We've got benches on both sides of the one pond. We're in the process of getting other things put up around the other pond. It's so. Before we had any of the water features, we just had rock, just gravel.
That's what
And-
I have.
Yep.
And
And it's very boring looking.
there's nothing
There's
nothing
defining
soothing.
it. Right.
Yeah.
Nothing defining
So-
it. Yeah.
And I just wanted to mention that one of the things that we are looking to be doing is we're going to be putting in a feature here. We
Okay.
haven't tied down a time yet or size or anything yet, but we will be putting one in here so that area veterans, if they want to come by and they want to decompress, there's going to be a space here to just sit
Oh,
down and
wow.
decompress.
Very cool.
We're negotiating all that with Kathy now, so.
Very cool. I know I'm interested because I have an acre.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
And so I've got, like, my dad just built a casita in the backyard.
really?
So like I said, we've got all of this gravel and it's just boring. And one thing I do love about water features, I'm not so much koi ponds and stuff like
Right.
that because I don't know how to keep cats out of getting into but like you said, the water, it's very soothing.
Oh, yeah.
That sound of running water, and I think that
Well, that's the nice thing with Aquascape is we can build waterfalls that are they're pondless and
Uh-huh.
and we make them as natural looking as possible. So really you have the enjoyment of the waterfalls, just not the pond. The other benefit to that is the maintenance is considerably less,
Right.
because you're not dealing with a large body of water. Or a lot of people that I love wildlife, so that's a big thing for me. Having koi and goldfish, I like messing with them and that kind of thing. So, but a lot of people don't want that aspect for it, and so very popular.
But
are
they
the
do
pondless
want to
waterfalls.
have like the lizards stopping by and the dragonflies and the butterflies and the bees. They
well,
love
it'll
all that
definitely,
stuff.
yeah, it'll definitely attract
Yeah.
birds and things like that.
And you
so,
can have all that.
well, we'll have to definitely get with you and have you come out and take a look
Absolutely.
and see what you can do for us because, like I said, we have nothing that pops,
Yeah.
and we want something that stands out, gives you a little bit of curb appeal, maybe,
Mhm.
and it's just
What's funny because when I started on the water features in the front of our house, Paul and
Uh-huh.
I used to get a kick out of it when we were first started. So we live over on Trevino, right near St. Andrews and the golf course.
If you're
okay.
driving down Trevino and you see them in the front.
Yeah, you can't miss them because all the other yards are. I mean, they're desert landscapes
And they're nice.
Yeah.
Right.
They're
yeah, it's
just no water.
Yeah, exactly. So we had a couple of our friends that we become really good friends with. One of them was Jack. He actually brought his truck and he literally stopped in the middle of the road, got out of his truck, walked over to start talking to me while I was working, and I literally left his truck running in the middle of the street. And we had that several times where people would just stop, and finally we got to the point where, and that's actually where we got to the idea of just using the house as a showroom because so many people were stopping. But I actually am I have a neighbor across the street that we're slated to talk further about doing a fountain feature for them, and there's been a lot of interest with that. And I think one of the things though that are probably the biggest misconception is that they use a lot of water.
But they don't.
They really don't. Everything gets recycled.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say
so-
they recycle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on a pondless, so a pond really, I mean, you're looking at just like a pool. So
Right.
A pondless, everything is enclosed underground. So your basin, your reservoir is underground. So you don't have the mosquito issues because there's no standing water.
Exposed
there.
water.
Yep, because
yeah.
once the fountain or the pondless waterfall is shut off, everything goes down into the reservoir and stays there. And so, like even Paulie and I tried to be conscious as well with ours. So we actually run our the ponds. The waterfalls are running 24/7, But our fountain feature and our pondless waterfall in the front, we have them on automatic timers, so they come on in the early morning. They're usually on till about 11 o'clock in the morning, and then they turn off, and they don't come back on until around 3 or 4 o'clock in the evening. So once the heat of the day is gone. So I mean, we probably top off. I top off the water features. In the summer, it's usually about once a week.
Okay.
Right now, I'm probably not topping them off for 2-3 weeks. So they're really not. They don't really use up a lot of water. And like I said, maintenance wise, very little maintenance on the fountain features and the pondless waterfalls. So
The best thing that my wife came up with, she said, I want rain chains. I'm like, what the heck are rain chains?
Oh, those are nice.
So I'm picturing, right, chain link, a link of chain or whatever, hanging down. I'm like,
yeah, what?
But no, and so we had them. My wife we had them hung.
Oh, nice.
And they do make a nice soothing sound.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I would think that
when there's water flowing, like
when there's
rain.
water, yeah. And how often do we get rain here? Not every day.
Well, and that's the nice thing with these is with Aquascape, we can tie in even like your downspouts to the reservoir.
Yep.
And so if you have a downspout, and if there's decide to put a water feature nearby, you can always run from your downspout into the actual reservoir. We have
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
we
There's
have
actually a rain
downspouts.
harvesting system as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
Wow.
you wouldn't see it, so there's no big barrels.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's the other thing. Those are typically larger projects for the rain harvesting, but yeah. So we have containers that have a filter system inside. So your downspout that goes into it filters all that fine gravel, a lot of you get from shingles and things like that, and debris from the roof. And then every once in a while, especially for us in the monsoon seasons, we just have to pull that out after the rain stops, pull it out, rinse it out, put it back in, and that filters out that water. So you can constantly be reusing water that comes from the monsoon
Oh, wow.
rains. Yeah. And when
I
Paul was
have to
talking
tell my
about,
wife about that, or when you come out, you see the rain change, you'll see what I'm talking about, and then you can give us an idea. That sounds pretty cool.
yeah, we have rain harvesting systems as well. I mean, you can think about it. It's like building a massive pond underground. We use what's called aqua blocks. They're kind of like think of a milk crate that's perforated, and each one holds about 1,000 pounds of weight. So you build your reservoir inside with the aqua blocks. It's all actually with liner, and you basically connect it to your downspouts.
Right.
And so in the monsoon, these things can go 500 to 3,000 gallons, and it'll store that water.
So like if you have gardening projects and stuff like that, then you can use that water for that instead of
you just have to
jacking
hook
up your electric bill or your electric bill, your water bill.
Yeah, and you just connect a actual pump to it so that you can use it. You can connect a spigot to it. So.
Well, I thank you again both for coming in and joining us today.
Absolutely.
Is there any last words of wisdom or anything you'd like to share with our viewers before we sign off?
Well, as far as with water features, you don't have to think of everything as just a huge project. We have them as simple as one fountain on top of a small reservoir. So, and because of the fact that Mountain View Koi had closed, there hasn't been a whole lot of options for people out here. So,
and come spring, we will have aquatic plants, hopefully some goldfish and koi, and certified aquascape contractors. Ponds done right, customers served right.
Very cool.
Did I say it right?
Yeah.
And we have your webpage up here in the interview too, so that when people do want to contact you, all they have to do is click on the link in the comments. I don't know how it works on the webpage there, but at least in the comments, it's in there.
It shows up.
And then
awesome.
they'll take you right to your Facebook page where they can get all
Awesome.
your contact information.
Well,
All
thank you
right.
for having us out.
Thank you for both for joining us. I'm so glad that you could do that. Take time to come in and join us today. I have a few announcements I need to read. Do
Okay.
you mind sticking around just a
No,
couple
go for
minutes?
it.
All right, thanks. Again, thank you both so much. I appreciate you taking the time. Okay, so today is December 23rd. So for the week, we have upcoming events on Mondays from 0900 to 1000 hours. We have the Marine Corps League breakfast. That's every Monday. The Marines meet for coffee, tell old war stories. They meet at the Landmark Cafe. If you'd like more information on that, please call 520-456-5720. On Monday, also, this one starts at 1730, goes to 1830. Five Treasures of Qigong, that takes place here at the Warrior Healing Center. On Wednesday at 0830, we have the Velovet Sierra Vista group ride. They meet over at Pueblo del Sol Country Club parking lot. So if you're interested in riding with a great group of veterans, get on your bicycle and meet them over there at Pueblo del Sol parking lot. Wednesday, 0900 to 1200, we have Paint with Sue, and that will be at the Warrior Healing Center here at the main conference room. Also on Wednesday, 1800 to 1930, we have Heart to Heart. It's a ladies PTSD group. This one is just getting off the ground. It's been going now for maybe a month or two, and it will be taking place here at the Warrior Healing Center main conference or the front conference room, depending on which room's available. And again, that's Wednesdays, 1800 to 1930, and that's the Heart to Heart ladies PTSD. On Thursdays from 1830 to 1930, we have the Warrior Headspace and Timing group, and that is also here at the Warrior Healing Center main conference room. And today is Hot Soup Friday. I'm so glad they brought the Hot Soup Fridays back because
and it's been cold.
oh yeah, and people love soup. I'm not sure
yeah.
what today's soup is, so we'll just say that it's a surprise. Tonight, starting at 1730, going to 2045, is the RWB Christmas Lights Jog/Run, and they'll be meeting at Circle K at 2275 South Buffalo Soldier Trail. Sunday is Christmas. Merry Christmas. The Warrior Healing Center will be open from 10 to 1400 hours. They will be watching Christmas movies and football watching. So if you're thin on family in the area, then please join our veteran brothers and sisters for some laughter and a bite to eat at Warrior Healing Center's low-key Christmas gathering potluck on Christmas Day. They're going to be watching the Packers and the Dolphins at 1100 hours and Hans Gruber falling from Nakatomi Tower. And on Tuesday, December 27th, starting at 1700, going to 1830, the CLUG, Cochise Lennox Users Group, monthly meeting will be taking place at the Warrior Healing Center main conference room. That's it for my, oh wait, two more, I'm sorry. Forgot to flip the paper over. On Thursday, December 29th, we have the Team RWB Thursday night social ride at Culver's. They'll be meeting there at 1700, going to 2000. And then on Sunday, January 1st, starting at 0900, going to 1230, is the RWB Hikes in the New Year. They'll be going to Karchner Caverns. Eric, do you have anything to say in closing?
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. Today's surprise soup is no longer a surprise. It's chicken caldo de palo and Indonesian sweet potato.
Oh,
So
okay.
get your spice palette ready. I'm guessing.
Sounds like warm and toasty and perfect for this cold weather.
We're about
Yeah.
to find out.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next Friday on the Michael Zehr Show, coming to you live from the Warrior Healing Center at Rising Eagle Studios. Take care, everybody.
Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.